Oh, can you hear that music, sweetie? There it is again. You know what time of week it is. It's time for Burying Fake News. That's right. This is the show dedicated to blasting fake news and social media posts and righting the wrongs and the injustice that's spewed on social media. This is science for non-science people. This is science for you, the every man and the every woman. First and foremost, top of the show. Huge thank you to the fine people who got involved last week. You know who you are, the deviant downloaders. Really appreciate the support. The Legion of Lewis, Mariella's Militia, the battalion of Burying Fake News were available on iTunes, on Stitcher, on podcast.com, Spotify, and all over the internet. But for those of you who are new to the show, my name's Lewis, and I'm the soon-to-be Dr. G. This is Burying Fake News, and as ever, to join me in this crusade, it's my missus, my carer. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The boss, La Heffa, queen of Burying Fake News, lover of La Langla Man, the spiritual leader of the Good Egg Nomadic tribe, your friend and mine, the great Mariella. Mariella, welcome back again to episode 8 of Burying Fake News.
I can't believe we're actually here. Hi, guys.
You didn't think I could do that in one breath, did you?
I was waiting to see what was happening, but yeah, I guess I'm less shocked. I've known you for quite a while.
I had to take a swig of beer after, but yeah, you know I did it.
Absolutely, never doubted you, sweetie.
How are you doing on this fine day since the last time we spoke?
I'm doing all right. I think I've had a pretty good week, and I guess I'm just kind of more waiting on, what the news and the current state of the world is like. Ever since we've left off, I've been following Jair Bolsonaro's experience with COVID, and I'm quite shocked, to be said. Yeah, and so yeah, basically just that.
Well, we'll get to that very shortly. Have you been following Twitter as of recent?
You and I probably do not search the same parts of Twitter, so you're going to have to be more specific.
Did you see what Elon Musk tweeted the other day?
I have not. What did he tweet?
He tweeted, "Send me your Bitcoin to this address and I will double it on the return."
Like Elon Musk tweeted this. His account, verified account.
Well, technically, the verified account did tweet it, but it turned out he was hacked, probably by North Korea or someone after some finances. Although I shouldn't make such sweeping allegations
I was going to say, careful.
Biden and some of the famous people, their accounts were hacked. I just saw Elon Musk tweet and I thought, I believed it. If it was Biden tweeting that and you saw, "Send your Bitcoin to this address and I'll return it in double," you think, nah, there's something not right here. But when you see Elon Musk tweet that, you think, oh, this could be legit.
Well, he is kind of like the eccentric billionaire, isn't he? You think like, oh, he's at it again. So it wouldn't be outlandish for him to tweet
Yeah, you
that.
think, oh god, there he goes.
Yeah, but it was a hack in the end.
Absolutely. It was a hack, yes. All a ruse to part people from their hard-earned Bitcoin.
Oh dear, that's terrible.
Do you know what Bitcoin is?
I actually have no idea what Bitcoin is. I know the type of cryptocurrency, which is, I'm guessing, is different to currency, so that's the extent of my knowledge.
So, episode 9, feeling a bit of Bitcoin chat?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of mysteries to unravel there.
All right, well, that's it. It's settled. Next week, episode 9, people. Tune back in for some Bitcoin, what it is, what it does, what it definitely isn't. But in the meantime, in between time, we're not here to discuss that. We've got to be discussing about hydroxychloroquine, which somehow we missed on our radar or just overlooked or just assumed it was so ridiculous that we didn't need to cover it. But I think the time has come. The time is now.
I know. I couldn't believe that we just kind of overlooked this one because it was kind of like a big landmark in the COVID, fight. And at the same time, it was, kind of outlandish allegations. So I'm happy to be here doing this one.
Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show. We're here to discuss hydroxychloroquine and its relation to coronavirus.
Absolutely.
So no one had really been aware of this. I'd say the first instance was Donald Trump coming out and saying, "Oh, we're going to use hydroxychloroquine."
Yeah, I had never heard of it until Donald Trump kind of had this press conference.
Mm-hmm. So they come out and says, "Oh, you're just going to use hydroxychloroquine," and there was no data, there was no evidence, there was nothing to suggest that this drug would work. And since then, that's pretty much been the case. There is no strong evidence, scientific evidence, to support the use of hydroxychloroquine for preventing or even treating coronavirus. It's not approved by the FDA for COVID treatment. There was a emergency use authorization, like compassionate grounds, because it might do something. And then they actually the FDA revoked its emergency use authorization, stating it was, quote, no longer reasonable to believe the drug was effective against COVID-19 or that its benefits outweighed the, quote, known and potential risks.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and I think the shocking part for everyone, at least for me, was that they came out. At least Donald Trump came out looking so confident about this, and all of a sudden, it was rolled back, and I still don't think the rolling back of this approval has had enough light shed on it. So people are still quite adamant about using this to treat COVID, though there's no data actually backing this up.
There is nothing to suggest this works. There's plenty suggest that it doesn't. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study of hydroxychloroquine in 800 plus people found it did not treat COVID infection. And then in June, the hydroxychloroquine in the UK recovery trial was discontinued after about 1,500 treatments and showed it just had no mortality benefit.
Huh. Well, I guess, yeah, that's pretty strong evidence against it then.
That's straight to the point, but if we flesh it out a little bit, so in March 17th, AAFA, scientific technical people, they sort of said favourable opinion including the use of chloroquine. And then it was on the March the 19th, so a couple of days later, when Donald Trump came out and he kind of started promoting it. And he actually said, while discussing treatments of COVID-19, the FDA said it was approved very, very quickly, which was true. And the reason why is because we don't know if it worked or not at the time. Compassionate grounds, it may do something and nothing else does. By March, doctors, dentists, they were writing prescriptions for it, for their family, for themselves. Sudden demand just caused a lot of
The surge.
prescriptions of the prophylaxis.
Wow.
Yeah, a huge surge in it. And then by the 24th of March, so we're talking 5 days after Donald Trump had come out and endorsed this, a man died and his wife was left in a critical condition as a result of ingesting a product containing chloroquine phosphate, and it's actually designed for treating sick fish, and they obviously just saw chloroquine and thought, yeah, let's take that.
Ooh, that doesn't sound very good.
Well, what they took is fundamentally different to what was being prescribed. I mean, it's not fair to say these people took chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine and died. They took something that kind of contained bits of it and died.
Oh my gosh. And is chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine the same thing?
Very, very similar. So they're both quinoline rings and with a little tail off. Chloroquine, I think it's just a methyl group on the end, and hydroxychloroquine has a hydroxyl group on the end. So that's like the chemical nature, and that's the difference between the naming. Quinolines are quite fun. It's an amino quinoline, I believe.
And in human consumption, would it make a difference if I took chloroquine versus hydroxychloroquine?
I think hydroxychloroquine is more effective than chloroquine, and in cases when chloroquine has resistance, you can use hydroxychloroquine, although now there's a lot of evidence to suggest that actually they're both relatively well tolerated in what they're supposed to be used for, which is not COVID-19. So after these idiots die, or one idiot dies and the other's left a pancake, on March 28th, the US Food and Drug Administration issued their emergency use authorization. This is just to get it used, try and treat anybody and everything. They also issued specific guidelines for a generic version of the drug. And then on April 24th, just shy of a month later, due to risk of basically heart issues, they canned it.
Ooh, so actually sounds like it was some pretty serious effects that they were saying that they couldn't actually, justify for treating COVID.
The side effect on this is just horrific. On April 29th, 2020, there was the preprint of a retrospective cohort study on medRxiv of more than 320,000 individuals that were 320,000 individuals that were not infected with COVID-19 but had been treated with a combination of HCQ and another drug, and they cautioned against treating patients with it based on how bad the healthy people were doing.
Oh no, that sounds terrible.
It gets even juicier. Based on results of a study published in The Lancet. Remember that paper we spoke about last week? And I said, if it's there, it's good. If it's not there, it's obviously something's up with it. The World Health Organization suspended hydroxychloroquine from its global drug trials for COVID-19 treatment due to safety concerns.
Ooh, that means it's really serious then.
It gets even better. The risk was also described in a retracted study in France, Italy, and Belgium, which banned the treatment. And even cooler than that, the Lancet study was retracted.
The original one that had said hydroxychloroquine could be used.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So it's been banned and the papers have been retracted. That's some serious firepower for academics and the medical field.
So, as I said last week, The Lancet, this is like a top medical journal, and if it's in there, I do trust it. It really raised the alarms about the safety of the experimental treatments that they were going through. So they retracted a paper, and about an hour later, the New England Journal of Medicine, which is another fine journal for medicine, retracted a separate study which focused on blood pressure medications from COVID-19, and both of those studies relied on data from one company. So the retractions came at the request of the authors of the study that they published.
Wow. No, yeah. Wow. Does it take a lot to? I mean, imagine it takes a lot to retract a paper, doesn't it?
The Lancet study gained so much attention because it went further than other observational studies, and it had found that the drugs were not associated with improved outcomes for patients. So it's kind of agreeing with what we already know. And the study was purportedly based on patient data from about 670, I think it's 671 hospitals on 6 continents.
Wow.
They also report the drugs corresponded to higher mortality.
Oh no.
And this is where it gets interesting. All the trials indicate that this drug does nothing. However, the Lancet study was saying, well, it actually causes more death.
Oh no.
This is what led to the pause of this is what led to the pause of several global clinical trials studying hydroxychloroquine because of safety concerns. They just said, well, it's not ethical to test something that we think kills people.
Yeah. So I mean, it was even worse. Like you had less chance of surviving if you actually had hydroxychloroquine than if you just left untreated.
Possibly. And here's where it gets more interesting. There was some outside experts, people who looked at the data, kind of raised concerns with some inconsistencies in how they were portraying their data, and that there are clearly some numbers, such as the numbers used to elevate the death toll, may not actually be a total of all patients.
Ooh.
The data saying it was useless was uniform, but they didn't have that same uniformity over fatalities. They asked the company that compiled and analysed the data, called Surgisphere, to explain how it sourced the data. And scrutiny continued to grow, and the authors on the paper, who were not affiliated with that company at all, called for an independent audit and said, well, we need to audit this data just to confirm what we're hearing from experts who aren't us.
Oh my god.
And then in their Lancet statement on this Thursday gone, on their Lancet statement, they said that Surgisphere was no longer cooperating with the independent reviewers and would not provide the data, just on one little section of it about increased mortality. And as such, the reviewers were not able to conduct an independent private peer review, and therefore they withdrew the peer review process.
Oh, that's quite a scandal right there.
Exactly. And scientists who looked at that data and saw those inconsistencies raised similar concerns about the New England Journal, which I alluded to earlier, where the blood pressure medications were safe to take for people with COVID-19, also based on data from Surgisphere, this company. And in the New England Journal retraction statement, that the authors just said, because all authors were not granted access to the raw data and the raw data could not be made available to a third-party auditor, we are unable to validate the primary data, or what they've suggested, and we retract the article and we apologise for the difficulties of this.
Oh, dang. Well, so does anybody have the data? Has anybody actually looked at it?
The company aren't giving it up, who's conducted this ridiculous, massive scale study.
Oh my goodness.
What's interesting about this is these are two incredible high impact journals, and the people whose names are on those papers are going to be made. They're going to be able to get more grant money going forward. And yet, even though the general assumption or the general conclusions of their papers are both in agreement, and even though the general conclusions are in agreement with other papers that are not retracted, just because of one element of it, they've both decided to pull their paper. And I think that shows what science is at its best, just utter honesty. And that's where we need to move towards, and that transparency.
Absolutely, and making these scandals a lot more public than they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
Because it comes down to the data itself.
Yes. So, and then following that on the 17th of June, the WHO just cancelled all trials. The UK recovery trial, we cancelled ours. Everybody cancelled everything. The data that was collected, that were announced on the UK's recovery trial, and if you remember, recovery is the same people who funded the dexamethasone trial.
Mm-hmm.
They both were in agreement that hydroxychloroquine does not result in reduction of mortality of hospitalized COVID-19 patients.
Okay, so to be clear, this has been banned in parts of Europe. It's been retracted. It's not being
Correct.
used. Yes,
For
for
COVID
COVID 19
19
use.
use.
There are still parts of the world that are using it, aren't there? I'm pretty sure the US is still going forward with this as a possible treatment. Brazil certainly is.
They are sadly misguided. The data suggests strongly that it makes zero difference to their life. It's not like the dexamethasone, which is still, in my opinion, the best treatment out there currently over standard of care.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm pretty sure even in Mexico we're using it too. And it's all because, one person very confidently suggested that this was a treatment without even being a doctor or a scientist of any kind.
Yeah, so this is all quite recent, but anyone who's using it, if it's for COVID, should not be using it. I know Peter Horby, who's the professor for emerging infectious diseases and global health in the Nuffield Department of Medicine over at the University of Oxford, and he's the chief investigator of the randomized trial of hydroxychloroquine, said the recovery trial has shown hydroxychloroquine is not effective in patients hospitalized with COVID-19. 10 days later, on the 15th of June, the FDA revoked their emergency use authorization for hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine.
Oh gosh. So, I mean, this is what, at the end of the day, what bridges science and politics, isn't it? It's you want politics based on science. You want healthcare that is based on science and not whims or political stances, right? And it's really sad that this is still, going forward in many countries, even if the data is saying, not only is it not working, it could be dangerous.
And even then, you've got people in the top journals saying it doesn't work, and then they've said, but a little bit of what we've said, alluding to it being worse than it is, we're going to take out, and it would be very easy for them not to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the level of disparity we've got between scientists who are generally correct, but just to a small part of it that isn't. They've retracted their entire, what could be a career-making move, and you've got politicians who spout nonsense, have been proven that it's nonsense, and double down on it.
Yeah, the doubling down is a shocking part, right? I mean, I'd have more respect for anyone who was like, you know what, never mind, this is not what the data's saying. So, um, I was gonna ask, is it possible that it does work on certain people, or would that just be, a crazy
No.
coincidence?
Based on the data, it's shown that it is no better than standard of care alone.
Oh wow.
That is to say, if it does work, it's not worked any more convincingly than supplementary oxygen and a ventilator would have.
Yeah, so it could just be coincidence that someone had this and improved then, but it's not actually attributed to them.
Well, that's why we have these double-blind randomized trials.
Yeah, very complete trials. Oh, well, that's really concerning.
So, and anyone who's left on the hydroxychloroquine trials, they've been taken off now, and I think they've been re-randomized to start another part of a trial.
Yeah, well, I would definitely want to be reassigned because initial data is not looking good.
No, I don't know anything about the company Surgisphere. We can definitely talk about it if people seem somewhat interested, but that's the company that are hiding the raw data, so to speak, which is they should never have done in the first study, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably a company trying to look after its bottom line. If it can get a Lancet paper instead of a lesser impact paper, you know.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of sad, but I guess another thing we don't really realize in our day to day is that a lot of the studies, I guess, are given to external entities to do the analysis, and then with these sort of things where we've got time pressures and a lot of things at stake, there could be private interests in there that are being pushed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of looking at people whose work is retracted, and you'll see that some people have a trend of several retractions, and there might be a postdoc whose name appears on a few of them.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by retractions. I won't name any names, but and I think this isn't egregious, but more highlights the transparency or honesty of the first authors. I think that the content of the comments is pretty much where it needs to be. I think that the editorial in general is still a valid commentary piece, even though the data's not 100% been allowed. We know it's not good and we know it has serious side effects.
And in the end, I think it's science at its very core and very essence, right? It's the ability to say, we are trying this, this is the method we used. Oop, it didn't work, right? I mean, there's no reason for
The most
everything.
fascinating thing about hydroxychloroquine, it didn't work. And the most fascinating thing about hydroxychloroquine is it's not, for some people, like a scientific study. For some, it's like a religion.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I don't understand. There are some people who cling to this, and I don't know if they're just sycophants of President Pig shit or they just wished it would work so they can go about their day blissfully ignorant. I don't know what the answer is to why people treat it like a religion,
Yeah.
but it's not being treated like a scientific endeavor, and that's the bit I don't understand.
Yeah, and exactly that.
Outside of scientific circles, I'm talking about the general populace, the public.
Yeah, and I think it's part of maybe of our culture of, um, don't ever say you're wrong, and don't ever admit that you're wrong. And I think the very essence of science is that it's, I have this, this stance, this position, and when the data shows me otherwise, I can change it, right?
Absolutely, I have no problem changing my opinion if the data suggests it, because that's how science works. It'd be lovely to think that we were the centre of the universe, but the data suggests we're not, so we're not.
Yeah, exactly. So what a shame. What a shame, really.
Yeah, you go back in time. Galen believed that our jaw was in two parts, and he believed that because he looked at the dog's jaws. You weren't allowed to dissect people; it was illegal in that time
Mm-hmm.
period. So we dissected dogs, and he said, like the dogs, that humans have a hinged jaw that is two bones, one left, one right, with a space in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Until we started cutting up people, and we realised that was wrong, and we says, "Oh no, we're not." It's like you're going to show someone a skull with a jawbone on it, and they're going to say, "No, there's not one piece."
Yeah, and again, in the field of neuroscience, for the longest time, people thought that neurons communicate because they were actually physically touching each other. They were interconnected, and it wasn't until
Really?
Ramona Cajal,
Oh wow.
experimented, and they said no, they actually don't touch. Their communication is electric. It's chemistry. It's not actual physical interlinking. And again, it's okay to change your mind.
Yeah. Down a neuron path, it's electrical unless you have we call Schwann cells,
Hmm.
which they're like insulators that go around the neuron, and they kind of skip that bit, and then they get to a gap, synapse,
Hmm. Hmm. And that's how, yeah, the synapse is a.
and then when the when the signal reaches there, it releases acetylcholine, and it's a chemical reaction that's picked up by the other end of the neuron during the space, and then the electrical bit starts again.
Yeah, and that's my point. Like, of course it would have made sense to think as an initial hypothesis that, well, they're interlinking. How else would you communicate? And it would take an experiment to say, what, actually the data is showing us something else. And then it's okay to change your mind. And ideally, politics and healthcare systems would also follow this model of, we think this could work. We've tried it out with this experiment. You know what? Data is not looking promising. We have to look elsewhere.
Mm, absolutely. So that's kind of the deal with hydroxychloroquine. It doesn't work. It's never worked for COVID-19, and it was pushed as this random solution, and people just took hold of it and ran with it. And all the data that's come out has said, no, it at best does nothing. At best, it does nothing.
Yeah. When it first came out, what did you think, Dr. G? Like when you heard hydroxychloroquine?
Oh, I thought it was lies. I thought I would, as someone who is a relatively fit, relatively young man, I thought I would rather get COVID and have standard of care than deal with the potential side effects that I know of hydroxychloroquine.
Hmm. Really interesting.
But yeah, yeah, it's a horrific drug.
Yeah, it sounds it.
So for me, I didn't. I knew why they were saying these things. I knew what they wanted it to be, and I knew it made sense.
Hmm.
But I also would rather, unless it was life and death, just be at home miserable with COVID.
Yeah. No, well, there's so many more questions, surrounding this medicine. Then.
I have tentatively been trying my best not to answer any from the quickfire, not so quickfire, but sometimes quickfire round. But that being said, would you like to move on to the quickfire, not so quickfire, but sometimes quickfire round, milady?
Yes, please. The suspense is killing me.
All right, so with the meat and potatoes out of the way, let's get into this little bit of the show we call a quickfire, sometimes quickfire, but not so quickfire round. I'm sure I got that wrong. Where we just go through common FAQs. Today, guess what? They're all about hydroxychloroquine. If you have any common science cues, no such thing as dumb questions, send them over to us, buryingfakenews@gmail.com. Sweetie, fire away. Number one.
Alright, so number one, hydroxychloroquine is an actual medicine. What is it actually used to treat when it's not COVID?
Malaria, and it took me about 4 efforts to not say it in the previous piece. It was originally designed to treat malaria. It's an anti-malarial.
Wasn't it used to also treat lupus?
Yes, it can also be used to treat lupus and arthritis and cutanate harder, but its biggest or most common treatment I associate it with is treatment and prevention of malaria.
Yeah, because I remember part of the problem was that the big surge of people trying to get their hands on this thing was that people who actually needed it, like people with lupus and these chronic conditions, they weren't getting enough of their own medicine, and they were like panicking about that. So I thought it was quite kind of sad. Second question. So why did the U.S. Health Department and Donald Trump think this medicine specifically could be used to treat COVID-19? Why this one?
I think they hoped it would work. I think they hoped it would be a very quick fix, and I think that's what they wanted. They wanted something that would not cost a lot of money and not cost them a lot of time and not get them bogged down. That's why.
Is there anything in the actual chemistry of this medicine or of the ailments of malaria and lupus and arthritis and COVID that could suggest that it would work? Like a scientist would be like, yeah, we could try this out and it would be a reasonable idea.
Well, lupus is an autoimmune disease, so I don't know too much about it, but probably not. And then in terms of malaria, malaria is not a virus. It is it's a plasmodium. It's a microorganism. So that's what I'm trying to say. So it's not a virus either. So if we go back to the timeline, remember on March 17th, the Italian Medicine Agency expressed a favourable opinion of chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID-19.
Yeah.
And that was, again, an Italian exclusive medical agency, I think, just trying anything and everything, and I think their study was cheap, and I think it was poorly executed, and that's why they got erroneous data. I don't disagree that's what they saw, but I don't think that's what was happening.
Ooh.
2 days later, Donald Trump says, oh, chloroquine this and hydroxychloroquine that. He's heard the Italians come out and say this, and he's just probably been told by one of his caretakers, one of his childminders.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
Well, let's not worry about this, Mr. President. The Italians are saying hydroxychloroquine is a really good treatment for it, and we've got loads of it. It's cheap and it's ready to go. So instead of coming out and saying what he should have said, which was, we're concerned and our thoughts go out to those who are affected by this. We have hope that chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, and that's what we can be used to treat. That's what we're going to be looking investigating now, and we'll keep you updated. He come out bold as brash, scared of what you said, scared of saying no or failing and being use hydroxychloroquine, it works, it's that, it's this. And I think because it's the first thing he happened to say, I think all the Trumpanzees just, rallied around it like it was the fucking holy grail,
Yeah, like I said, they really doubled down on this stance where, everything points to the contrary.
Yeah, they treat it like a religion. I don't understand it.
Especially because, I would think that malaria and COVID don't really have similar symptoms at all.
No.
So it'd be kind of strange that they think this medicine specifically for that would, work on something like COVID.
Well, this is what I don't understand is, for me, I don't know why they didn't look at antiretrovirals instead.
Yeah, that would have made more sense. It's a virus, you treat it with antiretrovirals.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know why they didn't start looking at remdesivir earlier on, or lopinavir or ritonavir earlier on, because these are antivirals. These are, in my opinion, more likely to be effective against a virus than a half-baked loony theory that come out of a trash study.
Yeah. So the next question is, Why does hydroxychloroquine not work on COVID-19? Could you shed some light maybe on the chemistry or why it wouldn't work?
The the mechanism of action on how it works in malaria. There you go. It's quite interesting. It essentially what they say is really funny. It changes the lysosomal pH within the body, and the lysosomal pH is what transports a microorganism into the cell. It could also transport viral DNA into a cell or the virus into the cell. What I struggle to understand with its mechanism of action, which isn't particularly well understood in itself, is that a lot of people say, well, it increases the pH and makes the lysosome acidic, whereas my understanding is if you increase the pH of anything, you don't make it acidic, you make it basic. So I don't just even understand the language that a lot of this is reported on. But one thing's for sure, it's definitely to do with what they call toll-like receptor 9 or TLR9, which that recognizes the DNA containing immune complexes, including the production of interferon and causes dendritic cells to mature, and it blocks those TLRs on what they're called plasmacytoid dendritic cells. But
All
again,
right.
this is what we this is to our best guess, especially when it's on microbes. And within a viral attack, I'm not even sure. Again, this is a drug that people don't even know how it works when it does work.
Yeah, and a virus is very different from a microorganism.
Oh, huge,
So,
vastly different. Yeah.
yeah, a bit weird that they thought of that one.
And then the other part of it that's strange is that it increases pH, but it must do this in a way that is not just donating protons, because the molecule itself is, it's got a proton donator and a proton acceptor on the same molecule, so it has no net pH.
Hmm.
If anything, I would
That's
probably
really
call it
weird to work.
basic because you can actually get a quaternary ion. So I'd probably call it more towards basic than I would acidic, which contradicts some of what is being said, unless it works in a different way, and that may well happen because I'm not a biologist, and that may be a thing.
Hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned before that there were some horrific side effects to hydroxychloroquine. Could you explain a little bit more what they are?
So, quick tip for anyone out there who ever takes a drug. The fuck, I just threw my pen around. Anyone who ever takes a drug, for anyone, that's how this is how passionate I am about this. Quick tip out there for anyone who ever takes pharmacology, pharmaceuticals, anyone who ever does this, and they always say to you, what's common side effects? Always say diarrhea, because no matter what the drug
Ooh.
is, it's diarrhea. So with this, it's no different. There's diarrhea. You can get nausea, stomach cramps, headaches, and these are kind of the things that you want.
You want?
Yes, because more adverse side effects is damage to the retina of your eyeballs, is
Oh
neuropsychiatric adverse effects such as agitation, mania, hallucinations,
my
psychosis,
gosh.
catatonia, paranoia, depression that can make you suicidal. It can
Oh my
destroy
goodness.
your internals. It's a horrific drug.
Oh my goodness. And I mean, do people who have malaria and get treated with this have these side effects?
Yes,
Oh my gosh. No wonder they suspended the trials.
that's why I said earlier I would, unless it's life or death, I'd rather go on standard of care treatment as opposed to this.
Yeah, sounds like a really unpleasant time to be honest.
Liver failure, loss of hair, muscle atrophy, vertigo, weight loss, the list goes on.
Oh gosh. Well, that's a very aggressive medicine then.
Awful, yeah. It can include vomiting,
Yeah, in a best case
heart,
scenario, no?
heart arrhythmia, rheumatic diseases.
Oh, my goodness. All right, second to last question. Like I mentioned before, Brazilian president Jair Bolsonaro, also kind of like a fan of Trump, tested positive for COVID-19 a couple days ago, and he apparently, reportedly, is using hydroxychloroquine to treat the virus, and he's really doubling down on that it's working on him. What's the best case scenario of using hydroxychloroquine, like in his case, and what's the worst case scenario?
I don't think he's using it at all. I think if he is using it, it's because he's from a developing country that doesn't have any other options. But likely he's not using it, and it's more likely that this is more another political play.
Oh gosh! And if he was to use it in a best case scenario, it doesn't really help him get better. In a worst
In a
case, he
worst
could get
case
really
scenario,
sick.
he has some sucky side effects which make him weaker and will push him backwards. Best case scenario, he survives from no or minimal side effects and it has no net change on his overall prognosis.
Huh. And so the last question, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, would you, Dr. Gooch, use hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID-19?
I would rather piss glass.
That's really painful, and you'd rather do that.
I would rather piss molten glass.
Oh, it gets worse. All right, well, fair enough. I mean, from what you've told us, I believe that. I definitely believe that. And I am shocked that even at this point, politicians still, double down on this.
Well, some politicians, but it's an awful drug with also awful side effects with no known reported upsides or benefits. And I think with that, we should conclude our quickfire, sometimes quickfire, not so quickfire. What the fuck do we call this section again?
Sometimes.
I'm going to try a third time. We're going to conclude our quickfire, but sometimes quickfire, but not so quickfire.
Quick fire, sometimes not so quick fire, but sometimes quick fire.
A quickfire, not so quickfire, but sometimes quickfire round. I'll see how that one comes out on the edit. If you're wondering why we're laughing, it's because I've had to just do a massive edit job. Send in your questions to buryingfakenews@gmail.com, but now it's time to move on. Sweetie, save me before I run out of breath.
We're moving on to my favorite part of the week. This is the only reason I do this show. Play that funky music, my boy.
Oh, another great piece of music, and it can only mean one thing. It's Tweet of the Week. Again, you know the address. Send them to us when you find them, because they are out there in the wild. Don't let them get away with this shit. Sweetie, kick us off. Number 1.
In the wild. You're hilarious. All right. Number 1. Rich people, politicians, artists who have COVID were treated with hydroxychloroquine, but thanks to the lies of the media and the left, poor people were left without medicine because left worked hard for HCQ did not reach them. Governors spent overpriced millions to pocket. Ooh, conspiracy
So the
theories.
right wing are blaming the left wing for not getting access to a drug that doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of followed the first part, and then I kind of got lost in the second part. I'm like,
Governors spent
what?
overpriced millions to pocket, and I don't know how that makes sense either.
Yeah, no, I'm not too sure. We're talking about, the left working hard, so it didn't reach poor people or reach them, and then I don't know where the governors spent their millions.
Well, I don't know about governors, but I'll tell you about mayors. Are you ready for this one?
Yeah, hit me with it.
You should contact Cuomo from NY. He allowed 35,000 NY to die of COVID. Actually, contact all Democratic governors and mayors. They'll explain to you why they banned hydroxychloroquine and why doctors couldn't prescribe this drug that could have saved their patients' lives.
Oh, wow.
Patiences.
Patiences, yeah. Also, and to died of COVID. All Democrat governors and mayors are apparently the ones that pocket the money.
Their death is the result of Democrat governors and mayors.
Yeah, apparently so. Maybe this is the governors we're talking
about. Not Republican Democrats. Not Republican Democrat governors. Not Republican mayors. Only Democratic ones.
I know. Again, where do people get this information from?
Yeah, cocksuckers, aren't they?
Number 3. Would like to know why Ohio is not working to get our COVID numbers down by allowing people to take hydroxychloroquine. It's proven safe, effective, and affordable. Those that have taken it showed remarkable improvement within hours. Why are we letting people die? Woo. Is it, in fact...
No one who has taken anything for COVID has shown remarkable improvement within hours. Otherwise, we'd have a fucking vaccine, and that's what we would have.
Also, is it proven safe, effective, and affordable, sweetie, for COVID?
Well, it might be affordable. I mean, depending on really where you are in the food chain over in that godforsaken country, but it is affordable. It's cheap compared to, well, even remdesivir is cheap. It's just the resale that's not, and we spoke about that last week. Yeah, it's affordable. It's not an expensive drug because, again, it's already been designed and made. And when I said earlier they wanted a quick fix, this is what I was actually alluding to, was that the drugs already had all the necessary safety trials. It's already well documented pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. They understand the drug profile very well, the dosing very well. It was a quick fix because if you get a new drug, it's a lot of groundwork you have to do before it can go from an idea all the way to market.
Yeah, I forgot to ask. Can you get it over the counter?
In America, you can get anything over the counter, can't you?
Well, this person thinks it's safe and effective for COVID, which we have discussed is not.
Do not take. Gets better with number 4. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. 5G has been neutralized in USA slash with Tesla technology 369 energy, frequency, and vibration. They are treating water with HCQ and zinc healing trails in the sky with orgonite healing crystals and HCQ.
Oh my god, I could not have even made up this tweet if I wanted to. There's so much happening.
This is what I say: is do you write these tweets yourself? Do you find them? Do you really think I could fucking write that?
I know. I mean, it includes 5G Tesla, a random 369 healing crystals. Oh my god.
You know what that bit's all about, don't you?
No, what is that about?
369, standing real fine. Open that shit second to me one more time.
Ow.
Get low from the window to the wall. To the wall. My mum might be listening to the next bit. I won't say the next line.
Oh, please don't.
The sweat dripped down my balls.
I'm pretty sure your mother is just covering her face with her hands right now.
Oh, she does that whether I'm talking or not.
But yeah, there was so much going on in this tweet. You know, orgonite, healing crystals, HCQ. I can't even believe they're all in the same sentence.
I have zero idea what any of this means. I thought it was talking about chemical trails, but I don't understand what they're treating with water and in the sky with orgonite.
And more importantly, 5G neutralized? What?
So 5G was a problem. It was causing it, and then we neutralized it with Tesla technology.
Yeah.
Which is 369 energy, frequency, and vibration.
Oh my gosh. It's so insane.
So I have no idea what's going on. And I mean, frequency and vibration are energy and vice versa. So I still don't know what that means.
Well, this one makes a bit more sense. It's actually quite cute.
Oh, this is a nice one. This was an old lady.
Number 5. Sir, respectfully, we thank you for this, but we do not want vaccines. We want HCQ or other treatments. We are seniors and they are trying to kill us off. We don't trust their vaccines. Can you please work on a preventive medication approval? Thanks so much. God bless you.
This was an old lady replying to a Fauci CNN news piece. So just, again, I say it every week. This is true. All these tweets have come from real people. I vet them. I go through the accounts. I make sure they're not just bots with a first name and 3 numbers after them. These are people who think and tweet like this, and all her tweets are like this. They're very polite.
I mean,
which is unusual for a Yank.
I mean, and to be fair, like it's funny because a lot of the stuff that they're saying is like, who's trying to kill off the seniors? You don't think vaccines what got us to having senior citizens around where kids are not dying at the age of 5 from measles? And at the same time, it's like, we want HCQ or other treatments. Oh my gosh.
And the other thing is, when you peel this away, there's one sentence in it that actually really highlights why this show exists and why an anti-science and anti-fact rhetoric is so prevalent right now. Mm-hmm. Can you find it?
Would it be we don't trust vaccines?
Exactly. We don't trust their vaccines. That's not someone saying, I don't believe in them. That's not someone saying, I don't get blah, blah. That is someone saying, I don't trust it.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to work on, is making people believe in science, if that makes sense, I guess. We shouldn't have to, but clearly there is a huge gap in communication between those we're reaching and those that we're just not reaching.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can appreciate how polite this tweet was. So I do like this one.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But not as funny as number 6. Are you ready?
Oh, let's see.
My God! How stupid can people be? Hydroxychloroquine Z-Pack Zinc has proven to stop COVID-19 hospitalizations if used immediately. At $2 it should be. Free and liberally used. It's only med that Fauci and Hahn stopped from testing, saying they don't know if it works. At FBI?
I can't handle the at FBI. Like, the poor guy who handles the FBI's, like, Twitter must be like, what?
He's going, hang on, what?
Yeah. What am I supposed
What do you got for us today? Aliens? You got Ghislaine Maxwell's whereabouts? What have you got? Some woman here thinks that, some bloke here thinks that $2 a pop and zinc and hydroxychloroquine have proven to stop COVID hospitalizations, and we need to investigate Faust. Good
As
work,
any.
Agent Smith. Keep it up.
Should any medication be free and legally used? Well, liberally used. Well, it should be free, let's say, but should it be liberally used?
I mean, it depends on the medication.
Should HCQ be used liberally?
No, last resort.
Oh, I hope the
For
FBI gets that
malaria.
person.
Keep the ball rolling with number 7.
Right. Yes, number 7. I thought that was, for some reason, I thought it was yours. Okay. Ooh, number 7. Oh, what a treat. Okay. God is love. Keep your booger hook off the bang switch. Take your HCQ and zinc. Communism fails every time it is tried.
I don't know what any of this means. I don't know if it's a typo.
What?
I don't know if this is just an old person. I don't know what a booger
I
hook is.
don't.
The bang switch, I think a trigger. I don't know, like a bang switch could be a trigger on a gun, and there's plenty of those in the States.
I'm tempted to say booger hook is your nose. I'm not too sure what a bang switch is, though. And I don't know why zinc would be all of a sudden incorporated into the
Oh, that's
HCQ.
another story for another podcast. But ultimately, communism fails every time it is tried.
So weird. God is love.
God, it's like, if you think that going against HCQ is American, you're a communist.
I know, and again, like, what is this obsession with communism?
Oh,
Like,
they're all communism, and
oh gosh.
I'm just sad that I would love to do, a whole episode, an hour-long tweet of the week of hydroxychloroquine and communism, because there are so many tweets.
Well, it tells you all about the American school system.
Oh god! And speaking of so many tweets, number 8, hydroxychloroquine works, but the media don't want you to live. Let the book burning begin. This is what the beginning of communism looks like. Ask the Venezuelan refugees how this works. First they knocked down statues, then they burned history books.
What?
I don't know. I literally have no idea.
The poor Venezuelans are like, what?
Again, their whole accounts like this. This one's just loads of hydroxychloroquine and fucking American flags and hashtag 2A and MAGA and all that inbred shit, but
Oh my god.
no idea what this one means at all.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm very confused. It starts off with hydroxychloroquine and then burning history books, so very confusing. Number 9. President of El Salvador announces that he is taking hydroxychloroquine, says most world leaders doing the same. Yes, snowflakes, Trump was right. Again, say no to communism and millennial lies. Ooh,
I forgot about this one.
it's a pretty good one. Like, something about it I really like.
I need to know what the president of El Salvador is saying immediately. Whatever he's doing, I want to do.
And I like the conspiracy of, like, most world leaders are doing it and that there is such a thing as millennial lies.
I'm sorry I didn't actually Google that quote. I don't even know if this is real. I presume not, but deluded all the same. And I love the most world leaders are taking hydroxychloroquine. Really? Are they? Trump was right again, snowflakes. Say no to communism
Yeah.
and millennial lies.
I know. I feel so special. An entire generation can have lies.
I don't even know what it is meant by that. If it's just people my kind of age range spouting lies, or if I have my own set of lies that are very different to everyone else's lies. I've no idea.
No clue. No clue.
So, more inbred debauchery bullshit. But thankfully, it's time for number 10. And number 10 is the special one. Number 10 is the palate cleanser. Number 10 is just for those out there that this is the light in the tunnel. This is just to prove that there are still leaders of truth out there, that there are still people who will stand up and purport the actual, what is accepted scientific truth, and will change their mind if better data comes out. And this was tweeted by @DocBastard, my kind of guy. Quote, I miss the days before the internet and social media, when ignorant fuckwits had no outlet for their bullshit opinions, so they had to keep those bullshit opinions to themselves.
Ain't that the truth? All the millennial lies contained.
All the millennial lies. It's kind of what Lyndon was saying, is everyone has the same platform now, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's like, if Donald Trump is spewing this thing, saying this or that, or whoever's saying this and that, then everybody can see it live in real time. And it just causes a massive uproar of, conversation that's more like screaming at each other into the abyss and misinformation.
And people who don't actually know what they're screaming about, which makes it even worse. Unlike me, and it's directed and meaningful screaming like we do here, but that's another story.
Lots of screaming going on elsewhere.
Lots of screaming, and we'll be back next week screaming with tweets of the week. If you do have any tweets of these, I mean, I don't want to call them all boomers. That's not fair. Some of these people are young and just. No, I shouldn't say that either. That'll be an edit.
Young and ignorant. To be young and ignorant.
To be young and ignorant. Another edit, folks. These people who clearly never really grew up from playing with their crayons. If you do find them, send them to us. But in the meantime, in between time, that summarizes or surmises, concludes, concocts, and rounds up today's show on what have we been talking about last hour? Hydroxychloroquine. Thank you if you've made it this far. You need a medal. Good God knows you deserve one. Burying Fake News, the show we give you the ammo needed to blast bullshit, knuckle-dragging insufferable cretins who spout it and shit up your social media. We want to stem the incessant flow of fake news. Science. What the fuck? Can you hear that?
What was that?
Wow, it's my empty point.
Explains the screaming.
I'm gesturing for my butler to bring me more Jarvis. Give me some pints. Where was I? Oh, yes. Science for the non-science people, science for the everyday, the every woman. We hope you had as much fun listening to this as we did making it. We run a tight ship here and a very professional show. We'd love to hear from you. There's that email again. It's also in the link. Check us out. We're on Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe. Help us sanitize the web of misinformation out there. It's getting tired and I'm getting late. Mariella, just say goodnight.
Good night, guys, and don't forget to change your mind when you're presented with new information.